realize how much you really don't know.
That's right, yeah.
You know, that's the biggest thing. Like, you know, you sit back with your DB coach, oh yeah, I'll do this, and I'm gonna run this blitz, and I'm gonna do this, and run this coverage, and yada, yada, yada. And then it's like, okay, now you gotta put this whole thing together, okay? You gotta manage a staff.
Right.
That's a big thing that people overlook when they try to get into a managerial leadership position.
Yeah.
Is managing your assistants, managing the adult.
Yeah.
Okay. And also maybe an adult that's older than you, adult that may have more experience than you,
right.
Adult that maybe, I might should have been in that position. You got to try to put all that together.
Welcome to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. This week, we're joined by O.C. Williams, the defensive coordinator at Tuskegee University. In this conversation, Coach Williams dives into how he valued getting a wide range of experiences, how he navigated change throughout his journey in the profession, and how he was able to learn from each stop that he made. But first, a word from CoachComm.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachComm is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Follow Inside the Headset on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. We drop new episodes each week, so hit that follow button and never miss a moment. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Williams.
Coach Williams, what's good, man? How you doing?
Yes, sir. Everything good. Just getting out the practice field. You know, I here working you guys this morning, so everything's good.
Yeah, that's exciting, man. I know your first spring there at Tuskegee, and I know you're excited and up to the challenge, man. I'm excited as well about the opportunity to kind of talk with you because you have a very decorated coaching career thus far, made a lot of stops, been in a lot of levels, and I just want to kind of dive in your unique experiences, man. So with that being said, let's talk about the start. When did you know you want to be a part of this profession?
Well, you know, actually being a part of the profession, you know, toward my end of my college career, you know, toward the end of my college career, I was trying to just figure out what I was going to do. And I love coaching football, love being around. I love playing football. You know, I wasn't no great player, nothing like that. I just love football in general and, you know, love working with people. So my end of my senior year, you know, I had planned on going back to my high school and, you know, just get a job, help out, you know, and kind of started from there. And my college coach, Coach Johnny Thomas, always used to ask me questions in meetings. Like I never was a star or anything like that, but I was like a kickoff guy, special teams, stuff like that. And so I used to ask questions, you know, things like that involved, you know, and one of the coaches mentioned it to me one time. He said, man, you're going to be a coach one day. You know, people say it all the time.
Yeah.
But then it kind of stuck a little bit, you know, and I like teaching and helping and stuff like that. So that's kind of how everything got started.
I love that you said that. I think when you recognize that you love teaching, you know what I'm saying, and the relationships and all that kind of stuff, not just loving coaching, it's loving that teaching aspect of it.
Right. That's the big thing. To me, I just, you know, when you try to help somebody do something and you see them do it, man, that's very fulfilling, you know?
Yeah, just definitely rewarding.
Trying to show them the way and stuff like that. So, you know, my last year, I'm planning. I'm graduating in May. It's April, and you know, just hanging out on campus. And I hear Coach pass by me in the cafeteria, and we hadn't talked about grad assistant. We hadn't talked about anything. And he passed by me in the going to the cafeteria. He called me to the side and was like, "Hey, come out my office. I need to talk to you." And I'm thinking, I ain't turn, you know how it is. I ain't turn my books in, or like I ain't turn my jersey in, or something like that. And we got in there and started talking, and he said, man, what do you think about coming back being a grad assistant for special teams? We had a guy for offense.
Yeah.
Sergio Thomas actually head coach at Alcorn State now. He was the defensive GA.
Oh, wow.
And so we needed a third guy for special teams, you know. And I always been, you know, special team guy, you know, kickoff team, punt team, punt return. You know, never was a start or anything like that. But, you know, I took pride in my special team. So, you know, I was in charge of the depth charts and rotations and worked with the kickers and punters. Just kind of learned on the go, you know.
And so when
that's kind of going.
When he came up to you and asked you about your interests, like what was that 24-hour process for you? Like, to, kind of know that maybe coaching might be in your cards, but to all of a sudden get asked and maybe have to recognize what comes with being a coach in a profession.
Right. So the main thing was, for me, was just processing the fact that he thought of me like that.
Yeah.
Because like I said again, the GAs before me were starting quarterback, starting free safeties, guys that was on the forefront, and I was more of a back burner special teams guy. And the fact that he recognized me as a person that, could possibly join his staff, I thought that was, it was just, pretty overwhelming actually, to be honest with you, because I couldn't believe it, And so, I said, yeah, of course, I'd love to do it, because, that's something I wanted to do anyway.
Right.
I didn't know this was my path though.
Now, I feel like I've been asked this question a lot here. My last few guests have been luckily enough to kind of get a start off at the alma mater. And I do like to ask this question always because it's kind of some different answers every time. But, just a few months, I'm talking about at this point in time in your life, just a few months ago, you were hanging out in the locker room with a bunch of the guys. These were your boys,
right.
You're running through campus with them and all that kind of stuff. Now, all of a sudden, you step into this GA role where you are in a leadership role within that program. How did you, put that line of, hey, we're player coach relationship now. How did you handle those relationships at that point?
It was pretty good with the younger guys. Once you get to a senior year, you know how it is. You don't really, you know the young boys, you talk to them and stuff, but you really ain't just buddy with them. So right. it ain't as hard. But my older guys, like the guys that's 1 year behind me that we might have came in at the same time.
Right.
Just trying to get them to understand, like, okay, I know we partners, but we get out here, like, I'm really going to be coaching, And, it was a little resistance with some of them. Like, man, come on. When I was in college, they called me, come on, what we doing? But just stand to it, and people going to respect you. If you stick to your guns, you get respect.
Absolutely.
And that's what I tried to do, just make sure, I wasn't hanging around campus with the guys and stuff like that as much. If I see them in the cafeteria, something like that, talk to them. But, you weren't going to catch me on campus just hanging out, just doing whatever. The club stuff and all that stuff, all that was gone, because I was locked in on trying to be a good coach.
There you go. Now, we talked a little bit before the podcast, but I did want to highlight this. I know, sometimes when you talk about that special team coaching position, it can go a lot of different directions. Especially guys that are DB guys or running back guys / special teams or something like that. A lot of times it's more schematics than it is actually, the technique of being a great punter or being a great long snapper, short snapper, or holder and all that kind of stuff. That was one of your things that you knew quite a bit about. I think you did a little bit of long snapping there at Alcorn State. So just tell me about that aspect of being a special teams GA and kind of getting that experience early on with the specialists particularly.
Well, the funny thing about, actually long snapping, so in high school, I was like the backup snapper or whatever. And I snapped a few games, quarterback, and I played quarterback in high school.
Okay.
So you play quarterback and snapping, some of the mechanics is very similar, So I got the all-point, I used to just mess around. We had a long snapper, starting guy, and I used to just mess around. I just snap, just mess around, whatever. And we played in Valley State, and he played on a special team and hurt his leg. And everybody going crazy, like, we get a snapper, we got to, and I'm looking around like, we got somebody else. And they're like, OC, okay, you ready? And I was like, and again, I was going to kick off and punt. I'm a shield guy on punt team, not a shield guy, but frontline guy on punt team and stuff like that. I warmed up a few times and got out there and, we was playing Mississippi Valley and survived, So I had a little bit of idea. So when I became a grad assistant, you start reading, because I was out there just winging it, when I played. I didn't know nothing about it. I was almost a one-hand snapper, actually, because I played quarterback, so similar.
Right.
But when I became a grad assistant, start reading on it, just learning drills, calling people, just what does an individual look like? What does this look like for special teams? And learn some of the techniques and stuff like that. Plus, a lot of times, of course, you notice that specialists kind of know the stuff. It's more so putting a routine together for them. So their practices are close to a practice of a defensive back for a wide receiver. So for 10 minutes, we working on this. For 5 minutes, we working on this. So, and that's what our head coach wanted them to have a little more structure on what they do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you can ask those guys angles and times, and they know it.
Right.
They know it. So
for sure.
So
and I think you can go to a lot of campuses, both college, maybe pro, I don't know, but high school for sure. You can go on a lot of campuses and they just take the specialist and point to that field over there and say, hey, go do your thing. And they for 30 minutes they're out there doing Lord knows what. You just put some structure to it, made sure that they were getting better at their craft. I appreciate you sharing that. Now, you GA for a year, then you had the opportunity to jump across the border, Mississippi, and head over to Monroe, Louisiana to work at Richwood High School for a couple of years as a defensive backs coach. Now, you mentioned initially when you're kind of mulling the idea of coaching was to potentially maybe go back to Lexington and coach at your local high school that you graduated from. But your first high school experience ends up being in a different state at a good program there in Monroe. Had the opportunity to live there for a little bit myself. What led to you taking that job? What led to you hopping out the collegiate space? What was kind of that whole situation that led up to you leaving?
Just a big part of it, being a fifth-year senior, then graduating and going to grad school for that year. And I finished a few hours and stuff like that, but just trying to get a little money in my pocket. My family, my background, it ain't, you ain't get a lot of money coming in from home. I mean, my family does well as far as taking care of our kids and stuff, but we wasn't, getting a car and having a car and keeping your car up.
Yeah.
You have a flat tire or something, you ain't got no money to get, it's sick and all that kind of stuff. So, I just wanted to get out and kind of make my own way. And just started. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Come finish.
And, and just started sending out resumes on the fax machine. And Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, I just every night I sent about 15 faxes out. I used to get the high school book that had the phone number and the fax number.
Yeah.
And I would just every night I just pick me 15 places, and I wouldn't even look at the coach's name or anything. I just made me a resume and to the head coach, and I run it through. And the head coach at Richwood, which I had no clue, played at Alcorn State back in the early 80s. And he reached out to me, and that's how we got started.
There you go. So you get a full-time job.
Yes, sir.
I once again, talking money, especially in today's climate where you do have such a drastic, in the same coaching profession, although different levels, you have, guys making $5-6 million, and you got guys making $500 or $600 a month. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
It's just you got a lot of guys actually doing it for free as well. Some of those volunteer roles. But I do, when the topic comes up, I do like talking about money a little bit and the sacrifice that kind of comes into, if you want to get in this profession, sometimes even, some of these divisional collegiate jobs, they don't pay much. And, there's just a ton of sacrifice that kind of comes with it. Just a little bit from your point of view. I know you talked about, you weren't getting, $1,000 from mom and dad every couple of weeks or anything like that. What did you kind of do to survive, at least at the early part where it is a grind, both financially, and just in the profession as a worker, to where you can't go get a job?
You mean as a grad assistant?
As a grad assistant, and then I know you end up kind of afterwards back at East Mississippi, McPherson early on.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The first thing is, when you get into it, especially when you get to the college, especially the college level, a lot of guys don't realize the pay of some of these jobs, the entry level when you start out, they have no clue. Yeah. Everybody sees the internet and what this guy's making here and what this guy's making here and things like that. But, 90% of us now, we gotta climb that ladder. We gotta find our niche. And I've done a lot of different things, so we was at East Mississippi. You mentioned East Mississippi. I worked in the open gym at night. So we would coach football during the day. I worked open gym at night from like 6 to 10, get up the next morning. Some days I worked maintenance. So they had different little jobs on campus that you could take and, to supplement your pay.
Right.
And so I did those. I mean, if you got to stay up a couple extra hours at night, lose a little sleep, you got to make a sacrifice. Sacrifice, got to give up something to try to get something else. That's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
So if I want to coach football, at this level, I'm going to have to give me a second job, Another thing, too, is living within your means. Living within your means when you're starting out. You're a single man, not doing too much. putting your pennies back, eating in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Not going out, meal prepping, doing things like that to try to get yourself going.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, because that is something that's not talked about that much, but I mean, there's oftentimes, man, you can go step into this profession and for instance, I talk about myself. I immediately got a high school job here in Texas. I'm not saying I was rich, but I was making $50,000-$60,000 a year as a teacher and a coach. And then I go step in the collegiate space. I mean, my salary drops 75% at that point in time.
That's right.
Yeah, so the car note and the insurance and the cell phone and the extra cell phone and the hotspot that I was walking on.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like, okay, do I want to do this or do I want to, something's got to give at some point in time. So
right, that's right.
Once again, it's one of those things that's not talked about often, but it is a serious part about getting your feet wet in the profession. It's just a little bit of sacrifice that kind of comes with it.
That's right.
Now, one of the things too, we talked about offline, but I did want to share. In 2001, you were kind of able to establish something. I don't know financially what the ramifications are, but in 2001, you kind of started a relationship with the CFL. I think it was the Edmonton Eskimos at the time. I'm sure the teams have changed over time, but you were able to build a relationship that now it's kind of created a little opportunity for you to maybe network and just kind of be in the know about what's going on. Talk to us a little bit about that and how long that relationship has been going.
Oh, yes, sir. So in 2001, I think it was Christmas, Thanksgiving, during that time right there, a scout from the CFL called trying to find out some information on one of our linebackers, Lewis Green. Good player, played for the Broncos for a little while. And so we started talking, and he was trying to find him on campus back then. 2001, of course, we didn't have cell phones. So I had to go on campus and find him and tell him about the workout they were having and stuff like that. And he told me he was looking for a coach to come and work in Jackson, Mississippi. He was trying to find one of our full-time coaches. But with nobody on campus, it was right before Thanksgiving, so everybody was kind of out, recruiting, doing things like that. And he said, anybody that can help me? I said, I can help you, And that's Mr. Paul Jones. That was 2001. So I went up and helped him, and gave me dinner and paid me $100. And I'm right there in Jackson. I'm from Lexington, Mississippi, so it's right there. $100 for the weekend. It's not a bad little deal, So I made a little $100, and he said, hey, man, I got another one's coming up Monday or Sunday in New Orleans. You want to go? I said, yes, sir. So he stopped in Jackson, picked me up. He stayed in Shreveport at the time, I think. And come through Jackson, picked me up, and go to New Orleans. And we did that, and then he said, I got 1 or 2 weeks. You want to go? That's kind of how I got going, And that was 2001. I still do them, actually. It's a little better than 100 now, but it ain't as many.
Right.
But I still do them. He also called me about prospects in the area, at different schools in our region. So now he get ready for the combine and stuff like that, post-combine, pro day, stuff like that. He can have his eye on some players. So I've been doing that for 24 years now.
Yeah.
We have a great relationship.
I think that's interesting too. I think anytime you got any opportunity to get some experience in this profession,
right.
it might not pay dividends for you at that very moment. Obviously it did, because you were able to kind of gain $200 here in a couple weekends, as you weren't making much money, but at the same time, you were probably learning about evaluation, probably learning about, how to run evaluation, helped you out as maybe in camps that you've done over the
100%.
course of your career. Just little things, little opportunities like that. And then probably networking more than anything, being able to have some exposure to some of these CFL programs and things like that. And so I think I thought that was an awesome little deal that you've been able to do for the almost past quarter of a decade, quarter of a century, excuse me. And appreciate you sharing that. Now, let's kind of get back to this deal. You were at Richwood for 2 years, 2002, 2003, and then you took the opportunity to go to East Mississippi. What was the itch that made you want to get back to the collegiate level? And, once again, East Mississippi Community College is a junior college. If anybody doesn't know, Mississippi Junior College is just a different deal. Just the level of talent that can roll through some of those programs. I mean, you're that high school straight to Mississippi, having that experience in such a storied program, which I don't know if it was storied then at the time. How did
definitely wasn't storied at the time. Definitely.
Oh yeah, so okay, I guess we'll talk about that. But what made you decide to take that opportunity?
So when I was coaching at Richwood, of course, living over in Monroe, Neville High School offensive coordinator, we used to scrimmage those guys in the summertime, just 7-on-7 stuff like that. And he reached out to me, was like, man, I like how you coach your guys up. I like, your attention to detail, things like that. He said, I'm going over to be the OC at East Mississippi. And I was defensive backs coach at that time. But he said, it's a receiver position, but I know you know Mississippi recruiting-wise, stuff like that. You know, you come over, we'll figure it out. So I ended up coaching receivers for that 1 year. So it was just a deal where you're going against a guy in the area for some years, and he kind of,
respect,
taking a liking to you.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a plan to get back home, you know. And kind of like you said, taking the pay cut, you know, going from a full-time teacher and coach and making a couple of dollars to taking that big pay cut to get back on the college level, you know, and, just getting the opportunity to maybe, advance my career as a coach.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about being that was your year to be a receiver coach. Your background is obviously was defensive back at least at that point in time, but you played quarterback in high school, so you knew some offensive stuff. Have
an idea?
Yeah. How rewarding was it for you? I guess I'd say to be able to just have some early experience on both sides of the ball. Just all three at this point in time. I guess now you did special teams there at Alcorn State.
Right.
You've done DB there at Richwood, and now you're sitting here getting some offense experience. You know, sitting here in what 24, 25 years in the profession. How rewarding was that, and how much of a better coach did that make you? Just getting that wide range of experience early on.
It was great as far as just learning like the overall schematic part of the offense.
Yeah.
You know, what guys are looking at, what guys are trying to do, how they're trying to attack you, especially being a defensive back coach, how receivers are trying to attack you. You know, Coach John Carr, I think he's going to Starkville High School right now to be the head coach over there. But he was at Monroe at one time. He's a great quarterback receiver guy, you know. And he just talked about how to look off safeties and how to read corners and too high reads. If it's too high, I'm reading the corner. If it's one high, I'm reading this guy. And, you know, high-low concepts and things like that. And I was like, man, so that's what y'all be looking at. You know, that's my first time really getting that.
From that perspective, yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's what y'all looking at,
yeah.
Okay? So it helped me moving forward as far as disguising coverages, giving one look, really giving you something else, you know, things like that, you know, and just getting back on that college level to where I have my own position group, you know, have my own meetings because at Alcorn State, I didn't have my own meetings, you know, with college kids.
Right.
So I got a chance to have my own group, you know, and it was a good experience.
Yeah.
You know.
And so now you're sitting here 4 years in the profession, and you've coached junior college ball in Mississippi, which once again I said is huge. Obviously, there's a whole recruiting aspect that's very unique to coaching at a junior college. You coached at a great high school there in Louisiana, and then you had the opportunity to coach at Division I level at Alcorn State. And then also the variety, as I mentioned, from a positional standpoint. When you look at it there in 4 years to be able to go and just get such a wide range of an understanding of ball, because even as a junior college coach, you're sitting there evaluating your kids that you're going to recruit, obviously. And then you're also, you know, you're looking at kids, and, you know, Mario Price from University of Louisiana Monroe comes in and says, hey, man, you know, where are your D2 receivers? And show me your FBS guys who can come play for us. And you kind of have to know that, right? And so now you've just got a wide range of experience. How important was that? You know, that part of it, not just the X and O part, but just the different levels. I mean, because obviously you're going to trickle them to McPherson next. But just early in your career, you got to see football at a bunch of different scales.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. You know, I think the thing, you know, talking about the CFL stuff,
yeah,
I think it really opened my eyes to what people are looking for. Because like Mr. Paul Jones, he had been doing it. He's doing it. I mean, he's 40 years now. He's been doing it forever. You know, just the height, the weight, the speed, you know, the change of direction that you're looking for, you know, even as far as the small details of paying attention to, you know, small things as far as what group is where, what line you're in, make sure you do this. He gives very sharp directions, and I love how cutthroat it is also. I mean, guys get cut in a CFL tryout based on not being in the right line over and over again, you know. Hell, when all my receivers over here and all my DBs over here, and I thought they was on this side. And guys, I mean, it's a trickle down effect. No, he gonna mess me up. He's not a pro. So then when you get into college recruiting, you start looking for those same attributes. You know, the eye contact when you're talking to them. You know, the handshake, stuff like that. Sometimes it ain't make or break, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
You know, it's something to keep an eye on. You know, grades, how grades trickle into the football field. Mm-hmm. You know, with things like that, guys really kind of overlook, you know. But all that kind of time. When I started doing recruiting, it's the same type concept.
Same stuff, yeah.
That I learned as a grad assistant. Right. A grad assistant also working with the CFL.
There you go. Now, after that year at East Mississippi Community College, you make the transition to McPherson College, defensive back / special teams coach in 2005. You were ultimately promoted there the following year to DC. First opportunity to defensive coordinate. But before we talk about that, why the transition? What made you take that job, and how'd you get on their radar?
So at East Mississippi, just going back to the conversation we had earlier, I get up at 7 o'clock and I go do maintenance. Okay, then I get over at the field house at 10 or 11, and then I'm doing football from 11 to 6, and then I'm working in the gym at night from 7 to 10. So I got 2 or 3 different little deals trying to make it happen.
Right.
And also taught a class on campus. I got my master's from Alcorn State, so I ended up having a little class I was teaching, things like that. But a coach from McPherson College came through recruiting, NAI school in Kansas. Came through recruiting. Kind of the same deal, it's funny how it works. Same deal that we had at CFL. Right before the Thanksgiving break, come through recruiting. Looking for some players. NAI school in Mississippi, you familiar. These guys are going to go Division I or they going to the Gulf South. That's kind of what a lot of them do,
right.
And so I had a couple guys that I thought could play up there and, got them in contact with the kids. Same deal. Got them in contact with the players like that. And we got done with that day, so Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And he said, man, I'm really impressed with you. I really like how you, helping me. A lot of guys don't help the smaller schools,
mm-hmm.
With recruiting. And he said, man, if I ever get open, I'm going to call you. You hear that sometimes. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
And that May, call me up. Call me up. Hey, my defensive back coach leaving. Would you be interested? And I was like, okay, it's full-time opportunity. It's going to be a full-time job, like a full-time. I don't have to work any other jobs, things like that. Just coaching football. I lived right on campus. I was kind of like a dorm director or something, but it wasn't, it wasn't no big deal, And so I called my folks and told them, hey, I got a job offer in Kansas. And they were like, where? How far is that? But I'm a young guy just trying to get it going, just trying to get it going. So, I took the opportunity to go up there and was up there for 2 years. Had a good time.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about this. I remember, it's kind of tying, I guess, into my story a little bit. I remember I coached in Texas in the city. I had just got done playing college at the high school level. I got to follow my college coach over to Texas A&M Commerce, 2 hours up the road from where I was doing college, an hour up the road from where I grew up. And then all of a sudden it got real. I actually coached at Millsaps over there in Jackson for a little bit. I don't know if I told you that beforehand, but that was kind of my first job where I had to go get a legit moving truck and go and right. make the big boy decision, I guess. Man, there was some probably don't say this very much, but there was some anxiety that kind of came with it. It's like, man, I'm moving.
Oh, yeah,
I'm getting in the truck. I'm about to go somewhere I've never really been, be around some people that I didn't play with, coach with, nothing like that. But when you're sitting up here, and I know you grew up, were born in Detroit, but you're a Southern dude for the most part, right? You hadn't really been outside of Mississippi too much. All of a sudden, you're moving to Kansas. What anxiety and just things that were you thinking about as you were kind of making that transition to your first full-time job, in the middle of Midwest. Oh
yeah, it was a ton of anxiety, a ton, because like in your mind you think, oh, I'm gonna get this job, I'm gonna climb the ladder, I'm gonna move, I don't care where I go. And then you start thinking about, okay, I'm 13 hours from home. Yeah. 13 hours from anybody.
Right.
And I've been in the South my whole life. I only been, the farthest I've been was Monroe from my house.
Right.
And that's 4 years in or whatever. And don't have no family up there. Don't know anything about anything up there. So when you're thinking about it beforehand, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go coach. I'm going to go do this. Blah, blah, blah. And then when it started closing in,
yeah.
You think about the football part. Football is football. When you start thinking about my living, my travel, Easter weekends, 3-day weekends that I ain't gonna be at home. Well, I'm always been at home on Easter, but I'm not gonna be at home on Easter. Right. We got, that's 13 hours, and I'm living by myself, so it's gonna be tough to make it happen.
Yeah. Just so you can those thoughts that roll through your head. That's exactly right.
Right. I got married during that transitional time, so was able to kind of make it, so me and my wife was military, so she was kind of there, then she would get moved and things like that. She was in Wichita a lot, then she got stationed out in Texas. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot. You don't realize it. You think of football. I'm going to try to get to some money and things like that, but you don't think about the life,
right?
Changes.
That comes with it, yeah. And I mean, to be brutally honest with you, as I sit here and look at the full picture of what you've done, I mean, you've been Mississippi, Kansas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, man. And sometimes you can get so caught in a profession, you look back and be like, dang, and I really have been around through all this things. So
that's right.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. So you get there, first time, full-time coach, making some good money to you at that point in time for dang sure.
Yeah, at that time, yeah.
Making some good money for the first time. Yeah, I mean, you had your room there at East Mississippi, but you got your room, you're back in your home position a little bit there as a defensive backs coach. Kind of what was your mission and what did you accomplish for them to look at you in the following year, promote you to the DC?
Well, my thing is, and I tell anybody this, if you trying to make moves, you got to be great where you're at.
There you go.
I know everybody says that, be where your feet are, things like that. But if you trying to move up, and at that time I'm just trying to go get it.
Yeah.
I'm a position coach. I'm trying to get to coordinator. I'm trying to get to Division II. Whatever that next step is, that's what I was working towards. And just putting myself in a position, just being a professional, being good at where you're at, making sure that your resume is who you are every day, and then when opportunity comes, you're ready for it because it's going to come.
Yeah.
It's going to come. In this profession right here, change is going to happen. Guys are going to move up. Guys are going to relocate, all those things like that. So just being prepared when that opportunity comes. And so after my first year, my defense coordinator left, first year. And, funny thing is, so the defensive line coach was there before me. So he got promoted. At Christmas break, he got promoted. But he had some family stuff going on during that spring. And he ended up resigning, going back and coaching high school.
Mm.
And so I was the next guy in line. So I had been there a year and a half and, kind of doing my thing. And I was able to become the defensive coordinator.
There you go. And so, once again, just like I said, obviously your career trajectory has been phenomenal, and so the proof is in the pudding already. But I do like to talk about some of the tough parts about this thing. So now you're a coordinator. You've been coaching you got to be 28, 29 years old. You've been coaching 7, 8 years. You know what I'm saying? So you're a young guy in the profession for dang sure. Hadn't had experience really at linebackers or D line. I know in some of those early positions you do so much, you understand it enough. But, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a first-time coordinator, as a young guy, trying to lead the program defensively?
Well, just, you just realize how much you really don't know.
That's right, yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Like, you sit back with your DB coach, oh, yeah, I'll do this, and I'm going to run this blitz, and I'm going to do this, and run this coverage, and yada, yada, yada. And then it's like, okay, now you got to put this whole thing together, okay? You got to manage a staff.
Right.
That's a big thing that people overlook when they try to get into a managerial leadership position.
Yeah,
is managing your assistants, managing the adult.
Yeah.
Okay, and also maybe an adult that's older than you, adult that may have more experience than you.
Right.
Adult that maybe I might should have been in that position. Mm-hmm. Got to try to put all that together and then try to make that work. That was the biggest thing that I thought, just getting the staff situated.
Yeah.
And then from there, just organization and management of practice plans, practice scripts. What are we running on these situations? Not so much of the schematics part of it, but how to put everything together.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things, that I didn't understand until I got thrown in there.
Yeah. You may mention about the management of people, and you gave these examples of the type of guys that you potentially could end up on staff, especially as a young coach. Coach, I don't want to say inexperienced, but I hadn't coached D-line, I hadn't coached backers, I hadn't coached the front seven, all this kind of stuff. And I truly don't think there's a right answer to this, but I'm curious of what your answer was to handling it, some of the real stuff that comes with that. Honestly, it's even tough for me to ask the question at times. I get guys on here and they're young coordinators. I'm like, I know somebody else in there wanted that job. I know somebody in there probably was on paper, maybe even a little bit more deserving of the job. How do you manage that? How do you manage the egos and some of the stuff that comes with a position like that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is number one is being professional.
Yeah,
that's number one. Like being a professional, because sometimes guys they may be better on that chalkboard, maybe better on the chalkboard. Okay, but how do you handle yourself on campus? How do you handle yourself in these meeting rooms? Are you organized? How do you handle the kids?
Yeah.
Okay. And then being a good worker, just being a professional and being a great worker. Like I'm going to be here. I'm going to be working. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to be organized. I'm going to have my stuff. And you got to know the football, of course.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, when you got good assistants, they going to know football also. You got to just make sure they on board. That's the big thing. Make sure they on board with it.
Yeah.
Not just come in, it's my way or the highway. But it's certain things like this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
We got to have a meeting a little while ago, hey, what you think? And I'll bring it up to them. What you think about this? What you think about that? If I agree with it, we go with it. If I don't agree, I'm going to tell you I don't agree with it.
Right.
And at the end of the day, this is what we're going to do. It could be your decision, it could be my decision, but this is what we're going to do. And just making sure that we keep the camaraderie of it. Sometimes it gets tough. But the same thing we want from the kids, you got to have from your staff. You can't preach together and work and no division and this and that, and we got division within us.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes you got to learn how to disagree.
Yeah.
You got to learn how to disagree.
Right. Yeah, I think a big part of that too, and you mentioned it was, from your seat, you also have to learn to be able to listen. You have to learn to be able to,
that's right.
recognize that, man, this dude might know more than me. It might be worth listening to him a little bit and, getting in his ear. And so, it's a good balancing act. And the funny thing about all that you just said is a lot of that applies for being a head coach whenever that time comes for you. Those experiences are going to be huge for you, down the road. Now, I kind of want to put a time out here. At this point in your career, it's 2006. You just finished your season as a defensive coordinator. You've kind of been around. You've kind of been at the different levels. What I know it's hard to kind of put it all on one stop, but what stop or what year was that year that you had that big growth, right? That one year you look back in those early years, you say, man, you know what? When I was at Richwood High School, I learned a lot, man. That's when I really turned into a ball coach. Have you had that experience yet at this point in time, by 2006 at these different jobs?
No, sir. No, sir. No, the next one kind of got me. The next one kind of got me rolling.
Well, let's get to the next one. Okay, so in 2007, have a long stint here. 2007 to 14, you head over to University of North Carolina Pembroke, which I believe is a D2, right? Division II.
Yes, sir. Division II. Yes, sir.
So, first opportunity there at the Division II level. You kind of knocked them all out at this point. At the Division II level, I'm going to kind of talk all about it real fast, and I'm going to hand the mic to you. But over your course of time there, you were recruiting coordinators at some point in time, special team coordinator some point in time, and defensive coordinator at some point in time. 2 NCAA playoff appearances, 2 All-American players, 2007 recruiting coordinator to B's coach, recruiting coordinator to be special teams coordinator, and from 8 to 13 and 14, you were at DC. So a lot happened at that stop, man. A lot of success, a lot of promotions.
Great place.
Probably one of those special, the special spot we're talking about here, right? Talk to us about it. First, how'd you get there? How'd you end up making that transition there?
I mean, you're not going to believe this, though. Same situation, okay? So my second year at McPherson, so when I became to McPherson, had been about 500. They had been kind of 5, 4, 6, 5, and 5. And head coach told me, he said, we've been, middle of the road, the athletic director and the president, they wants to be a little bit better. So my head coach ended up getting released at the season. Okay. So I get promoted to interim head coach. Okay. So I'm going through at McPherson. So I'm going through the winter workouts, recruiting, signing kids, study hall. I'm doing all that for like 3-4 months. And Coach Brian Ward, which is the defense coordinator at Arizona State, he went to school at McPherson. And so the administration asked me, like, okay, you want to interview for? I said, you got somebody, I don't want to go through that. If you got somebody already. So Coach Ward came in, had some great ideas, did some stuff. But we were kind of, you know how it is. I'm the interim. He the new coach. He bringing in new people. And it was kind of, you know. And then, but then during that time before he got there, I'm like, okay, I got to find a job. So I'm sending out resumes. I'm going back to the fax machine at all. I'm sending them.
Yeah.
So, but the emails now, though, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
The emails now, it ain't fax no more. It's email. So Coach Ward comes in. Me and him, you know, we butt heads a little bit. We start hitting it off. I'm like, man, okay, I like Coach Ward, man. You know, he realized, okay, Coach ain't bad.
Yeah.
I ain't saying, you know, I ain't bad. But my buddy that works at the MEAC office, he called me, he said, man, school in North Carolina starting football. I'm sure they're looking for some coaches. I said, man, they ain't looking for nobody. He said, man, just send your resume. Send it to Coach P. Shinnick. I'm head coach of Townsend now. Mm-hmm. So I sent it over there. Nothing. He reached back out to me and say, got our spots filled. Appreciate you reaching out. A month later, Coach Ward going to make me the defensive coordinator for him. So that's after spring ball. That's in April. Coach Ward going to make me the DC. 1 week later, Coach Shinnick calls. Hey, saw your resume, interested in you. You want to come for an interview? Fly over, interview. We don't have football. So Pembroke did not have football at the time. No knee pads, no shoulder pads, no football field, no anything. Okay? And he said when he reached out before, another guy said he was coming, then changed his mind. So took another job. So I interview on Thursday. He offered me the job on the flight back. I fly back over next week. Start playing football first season. So that spring recruit in April, and then we played that fall. So that's kind of how that story went.
Well, before we hop into a lot of what happened there at Pembroke, I would love to hear. I didn't realize that you were the interim for that little bit of time. So clearly, as you are running the program as a head ball coach for those 4 months or so, I would assume that you're doing it in hopes that when this 4 months is up or whatever that time frame is, that hopefully, maybe they're calling your name out to be the head ball coach because you've been doing a good job, right? I don't know. I don't want to speak for you and from that said, but much like any situation where the interim kind of sticks around, the head coach comes in, there's a little bit of friction. Yeah. That's nothing new. But you guys hit it off. Names you the DC. You go and get another job. Let's just talk about that, I guess, week or so. When you went to interview, did you walk into the head ball coach and say, hey, man, I'm interviewing over at this program in North Carolina, or did you kind of do it, behind the scenes type deal? And then once you finally took the job, what was that conversation like with Coach Ward?
Okay, so, when they named me the interim, I went and talked to him, just saying, okay, am I a candidate for this or am I holding the fort down? Yeah. And they said, well, we'd love for you to interview, but we do have Coach Ward, which is, I'm pretty sure he went there. I'm not 100%, but I know he's the coach there. He went there before. Okay. And, we interested in him, and it probably depends on if he takes it. And I just said, I just want to work for a good coach. If I'm going to be here and be an assistant, I just want to be a good situation for myself as far as the people I'm around, things like that. That's a big thing for me in my coaching career is just people I'm around, And so they kind of, I kind of knew that I probably wasn't going to be it. I'm just going to hold it down until the new guy gets there. So that's kind of how that went. And and Coach Ward, like I said again, coming as new head coach, you were trying to fill everything out. And we kind of, started early. It was a little bit of, friction a little bit. And then it got smooth sailing. But I had already sent out 500 resumes. You know what I'm saying? I don't know because I don't know what's going on. Right. And that's kind of how everything went. And I can't remember, a few years ago. So I don't know if I sent it out right before Coach Ward got there or soon after. But it was right during that time. But I had to talk with him though. I had to talk with him, let him know. If I'm going to interview, I'm going to, I'm gonna reach out. And let my people know. If it's a phone call, hey, you're interested, that might not come up. But if I'm actually
get on the plane,
sitting down talking. Yeah. Yes, if I'm sitting down talking, I'm gonna make sure just be a professional about that. Right. Just be open and honest. I mean, that'll take you a long way.
Absolutely. And so once you got back on that flight, he's offered you the job. Do you walk in there and kind of talk to him a little bit about the DC job, or you pretty much just say, "Hey, look, coach, I'm gone. I'm taking." Yeah,
I was gonna make the move. I was gonna make that move. Just being, young and ambitious. You know, okay, I'm in NAIA. This is Division II.
Yeah.
You know, money is a little bit better, but okay,
yeah,
we're on the track right here. We're on the track.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of how I looked at it.
Was there any just angst, I guess, about that conversation? I know, just, you know, being a young coach, you walking there and telling the guy that I basically just accepted this DC role with you. Now I'm telling you I'm out of here. Was there
right.
anything with that made that conversation tough for you?
I think it was probably more so with my college roommate. I had just brought him up there to work with me.
Okay.
My college roommate said he's at Northeast Mississippi College right now, Northeast Mississippi Junior College.
Yeah.
He's DB coach over there. It was more so with him because we had a great relationship. Me and Coach Ward, we had just started.
Yeah.
Like, we got a good relationship now, you know, of course, but we weren't as far along in our relationship.
Okay. So
where it wasn't just I'm breaking a bond, you know, it was like this more professional relationship that we had. So it wasn't too bad.
Right. So now you get to North Carolina. Let's go ahead and get over there, right? So you hit the ground running with the program that's just now starting up. You know, you mentioned no field, no this, no that. And so you're out recruiting and kind of preparing for this program to start. And you're able to be a part of this thing for the first 7 years. Just talk to us about that stop. What made it so special for you individually as you kind of grown in this profession?
The main thing was when I came and interviewed, just the energy of the staff. Okay, so they had already been there for the year before, so that was the fall. That was that spring. Hadn't played any games yet.
Okay,
they was going through spring practice. Okay, on the field they had just kind of cleaned off, made the field, kind of still getting the game field situated. You know, we didn't have a press box at the time. You know, we playing with no press box, stuff like that fall. But it was just the energy of the staff, you know, with Coach Shinnick again, you know, just his leadership. You know, it was life changing. Yeah, it was life changing as a coach and a person. You know, the way Coach Shinnick and his staff, our staff at the time, handled the players, handled the people on campus. I mean, it just opened my eyes. You know, I mean, I had been coaching high school, I've been coaching NAIA, junior college, you know, and but just the organization and the management. And I've been with some good coaches before then, but just the organization and the management and the way he dealt with his staff and his people, it was amazing. It was amazing. You know, it was unbelievable.
Well, once you kind of look at that stop, you see this steady progression of responsibilities for yourself, you know, throughout time there, whether it's recruiting coordinator, special teams coordinator, and ultimately been the defensive coordinator. You know, why was Coach Shinnick so, I don't know, rewarding, I guess, of your hard work, and what were you doing to be earning those spots?
Well, I think the main thing, the first thing is, again, just being on time. You know, a lot of things, you know, a lot of times we think that it's such a big thing that you have to do. Yeah. But it's actually the smallest things are the most important. You know, the smallest things. Try to be on time every day. Try not to be late. You know, I'm going to be, you know, even though I'm 28, 29, 28, whatever in there. You know, I'm bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, as the old guys say. You know, ready to go. Make sure I'm on my players. You know, make sure I'm recruiting hard. You know, whatever thing, he had 3 sets of 3. That was, you know, the things you live by as far as how you carry yourself. Making sure I'm staying by those. You know, we didn't curse. You know, recruit hard. You know, he wants to see your players develop. You don't want to bring guys in, oh, he can't play, and go to another one. Yeah. You know, your job is to get this guy better. So, you know, I just try to lock in and do a good job with that. I'm coaching defensive back, and I'm going to be the best one. The defensive coordinator, make sure he know I got his back. And we gonna get it done, you know. So that's kind of how, you know, I try to, you know, live myself as a coach. And then, like I said earlier, change is gonna come in this profession. So you just got to be ready when it comes. I just try to keep myself ready. So, you know, if it's football, that's you know, the issue. That's one thing. But you know, being on time, working hard, recruiting, you know, I can't let that be the issue. Yeah, that's holding me back. You know, I can't let that be what holds me back. You know, and that's kind of how I thought with that, you know.
Now, ultimately get promoted to D coordinator there, and I believe in your last year at Pembroke. What was the difference between that first year as the DC at there, not Reinhardt, excuse me, we're not there yet, at McPherson, and then that first time DC in there at Pembroke.
Yeah. So now you're talking 10 years, 9 years later.
Yeah, that's 9 years.
Somewhere in there. Yeah, good little time. Yeah, 9 years, 8 years later. So Coach Shinnick goes to West Florida. So he started the program in West Florida. So Coach Shinnick leaves.
He's gone. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So Coach Shinnick leaves, and Coach Shane Richardson, which is the head coach at Northern Colorado right now, he gets promoted to defensive coordinator. To head coach. So now he promotes me to defense. So I move up from recruiting and stuff like that to defensive coordinator. So Coach Shinnick is gone. Coach Shinnick, Coach Sonye, he's at West Florida now. Coach Jamie Deese, they go to West Florida. I stay. Coach Richardson stays. So again, just when the change happens, just have yourself ready for it. But it just was much more organized. Much more organized. Had a better plan.
Yeah.
Not a football plan, but just
planning. Yeah.
Just gotta know what's going on. And Coach Richardson, so he was the head coach, but he's still coaching linebackers. So you got your boss and your position coach sitting right behind you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So so you better be organized. You better be prepared. So I got my linebacker coach and my head coach. He's the same guy.
Yeah.
And then also understanding, okay, yeah, we're gonna run Tampa 2 today on third down, and linebacker coach said, "No, we ain't gonna run that today." You have to, you're like, "Okay, no, we're not running that."
Right.
So just understanding that part, and again, just going back to it, Coach Richardson, which is at Northern Colorado now, Coach Shane, Coach Shinnick, these guys are organized to the T. The organization and the management of players and people is awesome. Not saying other guys wasn't,
right?
But when I got with those guys right there, it was something else.
Yeah. And so that year 2014, that year as a defensive coordinator kind of comes and goes, and then 2015, I see that you were united there with Coach Shinnick. We had Coach Shinnick on the podcast. Well, they won the national championship right at some point, right?
They won it in 2019.
2019, yeah. I think a couple months after they won it, we had him on, and he talked about Pembroke, and then obviously talked about starting at both of those programs, and kind of how he looks forward to some of those challenges. But you reunite with him down there in West Florida in 16. I'm always curious, how that next job comes. Now, obviously, it's somebody that you work for, but how'd y'all kind of, I won't say reconnect. I'm sure y'all talked throughout the year, but how did y'all ultimately end up back together?
Right. So after the season, so the first year West Florida, they didn't hire full staff. They only hired. They didn't have full staff because they didn't have a team, no players, nobody on campus.
Yeah.
So he only hired his offensive guys. So he hired Coach Steve Sonye, which is the O-line coach at West Florida now, and Jamie Deese, which is the receiver coach at Forest Hill High School in North Carolina. So he hired those guys down that spring. So come back around, we go through a season, have a little, not a great season. Defensively, we was okay. We were similar to the year before. But we didn't have as good of a season as a team, So he called me up, he checked in with me. I see you guys play good on defense. I see you guys play good, whatever, during the season. After the season, he said, "Hey, I'm going to have a defensive staff. Are you interested?" And now when you talk earlier about me leaving Coach Ward to leave Coach Richardson,
this was tough.
To go down there, that was tough.
Yeah.
Because even though Coach Shinnick was my head coach, Coach Richardson and myself had been in that room since 2007.
Right.
And he one of my best friends. He's one of the best people I've ever met. And, I've been with him all that time, But Coach Shinnick, that's my guy too. You know what I'm saying? So, that was tough. That was tough. But Pensacola, I'm from Mississippi again. I've been in North Carolina 8 years. My dad lived in Mississippi. My dad is sick. Okay, so my dad's sick, and my son. So during this time, a little personal information. So this time, maybe my wife we ended up getting divorced, and so my son, 1-year-old son, and my ex now at the time, they moved to Georgia. Pensacola is 4 hours from Atlanta, 4 hours from my dad. Okay, and Coach Shinnick, excellent recruiter. AOC, I'm gonna give you Mississippi JUCOs. You can go stay at your mom's house hang out with her, at evening time. I'm going to give you South Florida, recruit, go down to Miami, go down to Fort Lauderdale. That's tough. That was a tough situation. So I was like, okay, that's a great opportunity for me. And, he gave me the landscape of how things were going to work. And I know for him to leave Pembroke to go there, it had to be a great opportunity. So, and get a chance to work with Coach Shinnick again. Knew the staff already, so you ain't had anxiety from that standpoint. Closer to the house, close to my family. It was a good opportunity for me to take.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sitting here listening to this and how good of an opportunity that is, and the fact that the head coach, Pembroke had already, y'all both had worked for Shinnick. You know what I'm saying? So right. I would imagine from his end, it wasn't that hard to understand, why you would make that move. Was the conversation that ended up being pretty smooth, or was he, obviously you're always disappointed to lose a good coach, but what was he understanding of kind of the benefits of that?
It was pretty good, it kind of tugged them hard a little bit from that standpoint, because the year before, when everything was going down, we all knew that Coach Shinnick was going to assemble a staff.
Yeah.
Everybody, he told us the landscape of how it was going to work, because when he left, if Coach Richardson hadn't got the head coaching job at Pembroke, he would have went to be the DC at West Florida.
Yeah.
But he ended up getting it. So everybody in mind, like, I know our defensive line coach, Coach Crutch, was at Townsend now. He knows that Coach Shinnick still got to get a defensive staff together.
Yeah.
So for me to tell Coach Richardson, hey, here's your DC, and then 9 months later, Coach Shinnick off the position, I leave. That was kind of
still tough, yeah.
But the friendship overrides that.
Yeah. We
talk all the time to this day. Our friendship, our camaraderie as people overrode professional decisions. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense, man. I've sat in those chairs, unfortunately, and it's never fun. I mean, it's never fun when you especially when you got a bond with the person that you're speaking with,
right?
To to feel like you're gonna let them down, or break break their heart in a sense.
100%.
Yeah, so I mean, I totally understand, and I've been in just a handful, not a ton of them, those conversations. But the crazy thing is, man, I walk into it with a little bit of, man, I sure don't want to do this, and I always walk out with, man, that's a good dude, and
that's right.
Always maintaining that relationship. So oftentimes it's never as tough as you kind of think it's going to be.
It's never as tough as you think it is.
Yeah.
And especially when you're dealing with good people.
Yep, that's right.
When certain people just think about themselves.
Yeah. Then you probably.
I hate to say it like that. I mean, I hate to say it like that.
Right.
If you're a great coach, and you got to leave for something, and this guy's upset because of a family deal or something like that, it's because he's thinking about wins and losses.
Yeah.
He's not thinking as much about this person. Got to get back to family, have to go make some more money, or you know what I'm saying, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
They thinking about, okay, wins and losses, so I think we do it.
No,
sorry.
You finish that up, and I'm just going to head to what's for.
Yeah, I was thinking about when we deal with good people, they understand. They understand. That's right.
Well, 2015, you do return, right? Defensive pass game coordinator, special teams coach, kind of reunited with a bunch of guys that you've been previously working for, and obviously not a similar situation in regards to location, but similar situations with regard to a startup program at the Division II level.
Right.
You're there for a year before you end up this Georgia job probably makes a little bit more sense to me now. I'm guessing that you're going to take here afterwards.
Right.
But you're back for a year. This is early on, kind of as they're starting to kind of build the culture, build everything there. What was that year like for you, especially to step out of that defensive coordinator role?
Right. The thing was, kind of going back to that thing we talked about earlier was as far as like stepping back and thinking that you deserve something.
Yeah.
So Coach Corey Sanders, Coach Shinnick hired him as defensive coordinator. So, during the time before, I'm thinking like I might go down here and be the defensive coordinator. Coach Shinnick said, I want you to come, but I have another defensive coordinator. So when I first got there, just kind of sitting back with my arms folded, kind of questioning stuff, kind of why you running like this, why you lying, just being a little extra, you know what I'm saying? But then I realized, man, this young coach football right here now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when you start paying attention, how he handled them players, how he coached them, how he recruited, I get on them X's and O's and can dial it up. And we're not even playing. Like this is a year we don't even play football. We just practicing. And it took me a while to realize, not it took me a while, but once I understood, I said, okay, this man coaches football. Not saying he's better.
Yeah.
But I can see it.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know, like you're arguing about two basketball players. One guy says this player, one guy says that player. If you really look at it, you're like, I can see what you're talking about.
Right.
You know? And so Coach Sanders, he actually the assistant head coach at Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. We talk all the time too. And so he started going. I said, okay, I can see it. Yeah. He coach.
Well,
he coach.
I love that you shared that, man, because it's so easy to talk on this podcast in general. If I run into you at the convention, we just shooting the breeze a little bit. It's so easy to be the DC and be like, oh yeah, I had this D-line guy on my staff, man. He thought he knew everything and it was hard, but how easily it can be you know, for you to be that guy, you know, the guy that maybe has the little bit of the ego and, you know, man, I'm a little bit more deserving and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's, you know, you talked about professionalism earlier on. I think that's professional. I think that's mature for you to not walk in there and that whole time just be a sour apple. You know what I'm saying? Just to,
right.
Man, you know what this dude knows what he's doing. Let me support. Let me support.
That's right, because the other thing I'm gonna do is hinder myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You become.
We're the same thing.
Right.
We're the same thing.
That's right.
You know. So if I'm questioning what he's doing, if I'm not giving my full to what he's doing, I'm only hurting myself.
That's right.
And a lot of times people don't realize that they, you know, not undermine, you know, just lukewarm enthusiasm with it, not really just.
Right.
And, you know, I learned a lot. You know, I learned a lot from Coach. You know what I'm saying? He was good, you know. And I think when you pray a lot about things and you really believe in, you know, the things that you read about, you know, all this motivational stuff and things like that, you realize, okay, it wasn't anything that I did. You know, Coach Shinnick just chose this way to get his staff organized.
Right.
You know, and Coach Shinnick, he started with it now. Like I said again, I'm going to make him coordinator. I'm going to make you special teams. And I'm going to give you these recruiting areas that I know you're going to want to have. Plus, you know, being a recruiting coordinator, you know, and that's how I got recruiting coordinator. Like, I love recruiting. I believe in the players.
Yeah.
So I recruit hard. You know what I'm saying? I really recruit. And so he gave me some good recruiting areas for Florida. But that was the best way for him to assemble his staff. Let me put these guys together. You know? Because if he did the other way, you know, maybe he wouldn't have had this. Because the thing about Coach Sanders was a defensive back coach. He moved Coach Sanders to linebacker so I could coach defensive back.
Yeah.
So he was just putting that thing together. You know, looking back on it, he just putting that thing together.
Right. Know? Sometimes hindsight is 20/20, right? You're able to kind of see the vision a lot more and how it made sense and how it wasn't nothing about you in regards to he's a better coordinator. Sometimes it's about just making everything fit to get a good staff together that can ultimately move us to a national championship at some point in time, which they were able to accomplish there in 2019, although you weren't there at that moment. So 2015 is a quick stop. You're there for a year. I know you may mention, I'm assuming, once again, I could be totally wrong, please correct me, but you make a stop as a high school coach there at Duluth High School in Georgia. I'm assuming this is probably surrounded by your son a little bit, maybe to get closer to
100%.
So
100.
Just talk about that spot real quick.
Okay, so I was there. I was at West Florida a year and a half or so. I guess we went through this fall and spring.
Yeah.
And so during that time, my son was getting a little older. So you know, he's a little baby. You know, you drive in and hang out with him, and you go on back to Florida and live your life.
Yeah.
But during that second year, he 1.5, 2, and I could just tell like. He know daddy, you know, and he knows when daddy coming and going and showing a little sadness when I leave and stuff like that. And so one night on a Friday, I'm driving to Pensacola, and I said, I got to go. Friday night, so I got to go. I got to go where my son is. And so I called Coach Shinnick. Coach Shinnick, can I come by, talk to you a little bit? It's Friday night. It's 8 o'clock. Friday night. It's black dark. And talk to him. I got to leave, Coach. Got to go. And I'm crying tears now. I don't mean crying from the heart. Mm-hmm. I'm crying like they said, crocodile tears. Because I know we finna roll. You know what I mean? We had built that team up. We got players go. Like, I know we finna roll. I know it because we had a great staff. We had great players. We had the organization. We had the scheme. Like, we finna roll. And so, but I just had to make that decision for my family. You know, that was the best thing for me and my son, to be close by him. So sent the resumes out. Wanted to be in Gwinnett County. That's the biggest league in the state of Georgia. Wanted to be a coordinator. So I had a chance to go to Collins Hill, where Travis Hunter went to school at. But I was going to be like the DB coach or whatever. But I wanted to be a coordinator. So if I got a chance to go back to college, I've been working at the highest level of football. So, you know, staying sharp, staying on top of things, you know, things like that. And so Coach Swank offered me a position over there, Coach Bob Swank. So he's over at Chamblee, actually. So Coach Ed Reed is going to be over there coaching with him. So me and Coach Swank hooked up, and it was a great time over there. So
good, man. Good. And so this allowed for you to, put what I always think is the main priority in this deal, which is, unfortunately, in this profession, is easy to go by the wayside and you know, get so busy in the profession that you don't forget about family, but you can without intention neglect them. And so obviously get the opportunity to kind of be around them a little bit in 17, 18, all the way to 20, you take an opportunity at Reinhardt. So once again, I'm not familiar with the location. I should have put it on here. Where is Reinhardt located?
Reinhardt is about 40 minutes north of Atlanta.
Okay. So you're
right up 75, right up Woodstock, Marietta.
Okay. So
right up through there.
Don't go too far. I knew it was in Georgia. I didn't know how far. So you're still in the same area, still able to kind of, you know, be dad, be present, be around, and at the same time, I would assume, based off your career trajectory, you know, wanting to be at the collegiate level and all that kind of stuff, you were able to do that. So how were you able to make that transition, you know, seamlessly from Duluth to Reinhardt, and then ultimately get to DC?
Yeah, so that spring, so I know if you look at my resume, I rarely stay somewhere less than 1 year. I try to stay some years, but sometimes circumstances override it.
Absolutely.
You know, I usually try to give guys, you know, I ain't quick to leave places, but sometimes different circumstances override it. Again, I was coaching at Duluth High School, and Coach James Miller, which is the head coach at Reinhardt right now, he was the O-line coach at Reinhardt. He became the head coach there during that next spring. He was our defensive line coach at Pembroke in 2007 through 2012. One of my good friends called me up, say, "Hey man, I'm the head coach at Reinhardt University." Okay, crazy story. So he got his staff going. He's the head coach a month maybe. Quentin Moses played at Georgia, played in the league, passed away, died. Okay, in a house fire. Crazy. So Coach Miller had been the head coach only like a month. Called me up. He said, "Hey man, I need you to come help me get these boys organized. I just became the head coach. I just need somebody I trust, somebody I know, somebody I can count on, I believe in." Because we had been together since 2007. Yeah. All of us was Coach Shinnick. All of us, okay? So Coach Shinnick, like I said, great staff. Head coaches everywhere. Mm-hmm. So he said, defensive line, though. I said, what? You know, he said, I need a defense. He said, man, we running the same stuff we ran at Pembroke. The calls are different, but we run it the same way. And I know you know the schematics. Yeah. I know you know what, but we got to get you got to get the technique stuff. So this is 1 week before spring ball. He offered me the job. I do my interview with the DC. Spring ball comes around 1 week later. So that week in between, I'm YouTubing. Mm-hmm. I'm just, you can YouTube everything now. You can YouTube clinics. Yeah. And all I said I was going to learn was get-offs. And this 2017. So this 8 years ago. And at Richwood, at Duluth High School, I coached outside back. So I had already been kind of working with the pass rush, doing that stuff like that. And so I went up there and got my ball and stick, and we hit that sled 15 days. They probably thought this guy here, man, he's terrible, And so I just dove into defensive line. And, so we was there 4 years, and, Coach Miller, again, he's a great coach up there doing a great job. And that's kind of how I got started. So that's how I got to start going from defensive back to defensive line.
Well, that's good, man. That's as we fold this thing back to you being in your current role, man, you kind of just continue to work all 11 positions, man, and probably putting you in a great situation now to have have not that you never fully understood the defense, but you can go coach every last spot your own self if need be, which is always advantageous there. So obviously, you spend those 4 years there. You go from D-line run game coordinator, promoted for the last 2 years to DC, and then 21, you take head back to the HBCU level at the FCS level, cornerback special teams there at Alabama A&M. Just talk a little bit about that stop, that process, and what you got out of that position.
Okay, so we had Reinhardt 4 years. We were undefeated twice. I mean, we rolled. We good. We went to the first year. I told him I hit that sled and just with that ball and stick. That fall, we went to the national championship. We played for the national championship the first year I was there, and we led the nation in sacks. I had players. It wasn't nothing to do with me. We had some guys. So I became defense coordinator. We were undefeated. We had all kind of records set and stuff like that. And I started getting a few interviews and had a few opportunities. And so I was like, okay, maybe it's my time to make a little move here, see what I can do. So, we got a good relationship, things like that. So, I interviewed over there with Alabama A&M and was over there for a short period of time. I mean, that was out of my whole coaching career. That's probably one stop I probably wasn't prepared for because I was with my son for 3 or 4 years. And I thought I was ready to get on back on this coaching thing, but I wasn't. So I get over there and it just wasn't, good staff, good people, all that. I just wasn't, locked in like I needed to be.
Yeah, understand.
So I ended up coming back to Georgia and just kind of restart. So that's kind of how that worked. It was an opportunity to coach in the SWAC and, but the other things kind of overrode it for me, and the trip, you look at the trip, if you look at a map, it don't look that far.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you know that track now. It's Huntsville. It's not easy. It could be 5 hours.
It's not an easy drive. No, not at all. Yeah.
It could be 5 hours.
Right.
Like it really could be 5 hours, and just going months without seeing my son, it was tough on me. That was tough,
And I think what's really unique about your career, minus the 13 stops that you made so far, is that I feel like as you tell this story and you go through it, there's something that you walk away from every program with. I think you realize, I don't know, at the very least I can walk away and be like, man, he walked away from this spot and family was the thing, and he knew he needed to get back rooted. And Duluth is a special stop because you were kind of able to reunite. And so maybe even this, Alabama A&M, although, from a career standpoint, you look at him like, dang, man, I went all the way there, but you got to realize that you weren't, and probably reconnected you back to your son. And I think that's important, man. So 22 to 24, before Valley State, assistant head coach, D-line, crew coordinator. What was that stop? And this was kind of your most recent stop prior to just now taking this job here at Tuskegee. Just talk about that last stop here before we kind of start shutting this thing down.
Yeah, so the spring of Coach Sean Gibbs was the head coach at North Carolina A&T right now. So he gets the job at Fort Valley, and our offensive coordinator from UNC Pembroke, again, style off the chain. I'm telling you, he was at A&T with Coach Gibbs. He called me up. He said, "Hey man, my boy's going to be the head coach at Fort Valley. I already told him about you. I know you want to stay in the area, so forth and so on." And I was like, "Yeah." So we interviewed, and I got over there this summer. 3 years, won a lot of games. Got over that summer of 22, won some games. Man, we had a good team. Great leadership from Coach Gibbs. Great staff. Again, 2 of those guys up there now at North Carolina A&T, and a couple more guys, coordinators, but it was great opportunity. I love coaching this area, in this league, so it was awesome. It was awesome. But that time I met my wife now, my new wife, I had met her, so getting my son back and forth, and, everything just aligned, everything was structurally aligned, so it was awesome.
Yeah. When all those things come together, man, it can make a stop, even that much more special. And here recently, you were named as the head ball coach, not the head ball coach, as defense coordinator there at Tuskegee University. hired in in February of 25. Just what has kind of been a mission here for the first month, a little bit over a month that you've been here? What have you been trying to accomplish as you take over that?
Yes, sir. Just trying to learn the kids, learn what they can do. Develop a relationship with them. The thing, a lot of times I think guys come into new places and they just want to blow it up. I think the first thing you always have to do is do autopsy. Do autopsy on it. Okay, what's going on? What happened? Right. What can we improve on? What kids can do what? Because it ain't just, everybody ain't bad. All the schemes not bad. You know what I'm saying? So what can we do? What can we improve on? Start with the staff. Just want to make sure we had 2 guys we were able to bring in, 2 good coaches. One guy had a previous relationship with. Actually recruited him to West Florida. So he knows the whole Coach Shinnick. He knows that. And then the second thing was, again, just, implement scheme and stuff like that. How much stuff did they already do that was good, that I thought was good, that fits in what we're doing, and then just kind of going from there. Getting a good rep on campus, just learning the law of the land, and things like that.
There you go, Coach. Well, man, I'll tell you what, I enjoyed this hour, man. I always want to make sure we put some nuggets out there that you can listen to, and hopefully as a young coach or even as an old coach, it don't matter. You can kind of look and say, okay, I learned something that can maybe help me out in this situation. As you anytime you make as many stops as you've been fortunate enough to make, and go through as many decision-making processes as you've had to make, you definitely left our guys with a lot of stuff to digest and take in, and hopefully help them out in their career, and help them be better coaches and all that good stuff. So, Coach, I appreciate you sharing. Now, if you got a social media account or a Twitter account that you'll love to share, so people can keep up with your journey, ask questions, anything that they might want to do, please share it if you can.
Yes, sir. My Twitter account is Coach OC Tigers. Coach OC Tigers, and it'll be OC Williams II. And I try to post a lot. That's where I tell my coaches, they say, man, you're a lot on Twitter. I say, man, that's where the players are at. So the players on Twitter, I'm on Twitter. So Coach OC Tigers. So that's where I'll be. I try to post and keep things up with Tuskegee University. We got a great program. We got a great coaching staff, Coach Aaron James. And we look forward to some good things this fall.
Good, man. Well, we'll definitely be supporting you and cheering you on, man. And we'll make sure to link that in the show notes so it's easy for coaches to just click and find you and keep up with your journey, man. It's been my pleasure, and look forward to talking to you soon, okay?
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, brother.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.